Johnny Carson was in the middle of his Tonight Show monologue when the phone rang live on television. It was his 78-year-old mother calling from Nebraska, and she had something to tell him that would break his heart and America's heart at the same time. It was Tuesday, December 15th, 1982. The Tonight Show was running like clockwork, with Johnny Carson delivering his opening monologue about President Reagan's economic policies and the upcoming holiday season. The studio audience of 300 was laughing at all the right moments, and 25 million viewers across America were settling in for another night of entertainment with their favorite late-night host. Johnny was halfway through a joke about Christmas shopping when something unprecedented happened. The red phone on his desk, the prop that had been part of the Tonight Show set for over a decade but had never actually rung during a live broadcast, suddenly started ringing with a shrill, insistent tone that cut through Johnny's perfectly timed punchline. The audience fell silent. Ed McMahon looked confused. Doc Severinsen and the band stopped playing. For a moment, Johnny himself seemed frozen, staring at the phone as if he couldn't believe what was happening. The red phone was supposed to be disconnected. It was just a stage prop, part of the presidential hotline joke that Johnny occasionally used in his monologues. But somehow, impossibly, it was ringing during a live broadcast, being watched by millions of people. Johnny looked at Fred DeCordova, the show's director, who was frantically gesturing from behind the cameras. Fred was just as confused as everyone else. This wasn't planned, wasn't scripted, and definitely wasn't supposed to happen during a live television show. The phone kept ringing. Finally, Johnny made a decision that would create one of the most memorable moments in television history. He reached over and picked up the phone. "Hello?" Johnny said, his famous composure intact despite the bizarre situation. "This is the Tonight Show, Johnny," came a familiar voice through the phone speaker, audible to the entire studio audience and every viewer watching at home. "Johnny, is that really you?" Johnny's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, recognition, and then complete shock. The voice on the other end of the line belonged to his 78-year-old mother, Dorothy Carson, calling from her home in Norfolk, Nebraska. "Mom?" Johnny's voice cracked slightly. "Mom, how did you, what are you doing calling the show? How did you even get through to this phone?" Dorothy Carson's laugh came through the speakers, warm and familiar. "Well, Johnny, I called NBC and told them it was an emergency, and they put me through to some phone that they said would reach you directly. I didn't know it would be live on television until I heard the audience." The studio audience, realizing they were witnessing something completely unscripted and genuine, began to murmur with excitement. This wasn't a planned comedy bit or a celebrity guest appearance. This was Johnny Carson's actual mother calling him during his show. "Mom," Johnny said, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that millions of viewers had never seen before. Johnny Carson looking genuinely flustered. "You can't just call NBC and ask to be put through to the Tonight Show. That's not how it works." "Oh, honey," Dorothy replied, her voice carrying the loving exasperation that only a mother can manage. "Don't you worry about how it works. I told them I was your mother and that I had something important to tell you that couldn't wait until tomorrow." Johnny looked at the audience, then at the cameras, clearly trying to figure out how to handle this unprecedented situation. He could have hung up, could have explained it away as a technical glitch, could have gone to commercial. Instead, he made a choice that revealed something about his character that the American public had never seen before. "Okay, Mom," Johnny said, settling back in his chair with a smile that was different from his usual performer's smile. This one was real, unguarded, and filled with genuine affection. Since you've got 25 million people listening, what did you want to tell me? What followed was a conversation that no one in the studio or watching at home would ever forget. Dorothy Carson, completely unfazed by the fact that she was now talking to her son in front of a national television audience, began speaking with the directness and honesty that only a parent can manage. "Well, Johnny, I wanted to tell you that your father and I watched the show last week, where you talked about your childhood in Nebraska, and I want you to know how proud we are of you." The studio audience, expecting this to be the setup for a joke or a scripted bit, gradually realized that this was something much more real and meaningful. "Mom, you tell me that all the time," Johnny replied. But there was something in his voice that suggested this conversation was different from their usual phone calls. "I know I do, sweetheart," Dorothy continued, "but I wanted to tell you on television because I wanted everyone to know what kind of son you are. Not Johnny Carson the entertainer, but Johnny Carson the person." Johnny's famous composure began to crack slightly. "Mom, I don't think America needs to hear about my personal life." "Well, I think they do," Dorothy said with the firmness that mothers everywhere would recognize. "Because you make people laugh every night, but you never tell them about all the good things you do when the cameras aren't rolling." What Dorothy Carson said next surprised everyone, including Johnny himself. She began talking about things that Johnny had kept private for years. His anonymous donations to children's hospitals, his quiet support of struggling comedians, his visits to veterans' facilities that he had specifically requested be kept out of the press. "Last month," Dorothy continued, "you flew out to Nebraska just to surprise Mrs. Henderson next door after her husband passed away. You spent 2 hours sitting in her kitchen drinking coffee and listening to her talk about her Harold. She didn't even know you were famous. She just knew you were that nice boy who grew up next door to her." Johnny's face reddened, and he looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Mom, people don't need to know about that." "And when little Tommy Patterson down the street got sick," Dorothy continued, ignoring Johnny's protests, "you paid for his medical treatments but told the family it was from an anonymous donor. Tommy's mother called me crying because she wanted to thank whoever had helped them, and I had to bite my tongue not to tell her it was you." The studio audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a glimpse into the private life of a man who had spent decades entertaining them while keeping his personal kindness hidden from public view. "Mom," Johnny said quietly, "why are you telling people this?" Dorothy's voice softened, and when she spoke again, there was something in her tone that made everyone listening understand that this conversation was about more than just a proud mother bragging about her son. "Because, Johnny, I'm 78 years old, and I went to the doctor last week, and he told me some things that I needed to think about." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Johnny's face went pale, and for the first time in his career, he seemed completely speechless on live television. "What kind of things, Mom?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The kind of things that make a mother want to make sure her son knows how proud she is of him before it's too late to say it properly." Dorothy replied, "And the kind of things that make her want the world to know what a good man her son is, not just what a funny man he is." Johnny Carson, who had handled drunk guests, technical disasters, and every conceivable live television crisis with perfect professionalism, finally lost his composure completely. Tears began rolling down his cheeks as he held the phone, and his voice broke when he tried to speak. "Mom, are you trying to tell me that you're sick?" "I'm trying to tell you that I love you, Johnny," Dorothy replied, and that every night when I watch your show, I don't just see Johnny Carson, the famous entertainer. I see the little boy who used to make puppet shows in our living room to cheer me up when I was having a bad day. The studio audience was crying now. Ed McMahon was wiping his eyes. Camera operators were struggling to keep their equipment steady. In homes across America, 25 million people were watching one of the most genuine moments ever broadcast on television. "I love you too, Mom," Johnny managed to say through his tears, "and I'm going to come see you this weekend, okay? We're going to sit in the kitchen and drink coffee and talk about everything." "I'd like that very much, sweetheart," Dorothy replied. "But right now, I think you have a show to finish. These nice people came to see you be funny, not to watch you cry over your mother." Somehow, Johnny Carson managed to pull himself together enough to continue the show. He wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, and addressed the audience directly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice still thick with emotion, "I want to apologize for that interruption, but as you just heard, my mother had something important to tell me, and apparently she decided that 25 million people needed to hear it too." The audience erupted in applause, not the usual enthusiastic response to a comedy bit, but the kind of respectful, emotional applause that people give when they've witnessed something genuinely meaningful. "I also want to say," Johnny continued, "that if any of you have mothers who are still alive, call them tomorrow. Don't wait for them to call you on live television to tell them you love them." The episode became legendary immediately. NBC was flooded with calls from viewers who wanted to express their support for Johnny and their hope that his mother would be okay. Letters poured in from people sharing their own stories about their relationships with their parents. But the most important call Johnny received was from his mother the next morning. "Johnny," Dorothy said, when he called her, "I hope you weren't upset about last night. I didn't mean to embarrass you on television." "Mom," Johnny replied, "that was the most important conversation I've ever had on The Tonight Show. I just wish we hadn't had to have it, because you're sick." "Well," Dorothy said, with characteristic practicality, "we all get sick eventually. The important thing is that I got to tell you what I needed to tell you while I could still say it clearly." Dorothy Carson lived for another 2 years after that phone call, and Johnny made good on his promise to visit her regularly. Every time he went to Nebraska, he would make sure to stop by Mrs. Henderson's house and all the other neighbors his mother had mentioned, continuing the quiet kindness that Dorothy had revealed to America that night. When Dorothy Carson passed away in 1984, Johnny took 2 weeks off from The Tonight Show, the first unscheduled break he had taken in over a decade. When he returned, he dedicated the entire opening monologue to his mother, ending with a simple statement that brought many viewers to tears. "She taught me that making people laugh is a gift, but making people feel loved is a responsibility." The red phone that Dorothy had somehow connected to during that live broadcast was never used as a prop again. Johnny had it disconnected from the set and moved to his dressing room, where he kept it as a reminder of the night. His mother reminded him, and America, what really mattered. Years later, when asked about the most memorable moment of his Tonight Show career, Johnny would always mention that phone call from his mother. "I spent 30 years trying to perfect my timing on that show," he would say. "But the most perfect timing of all belonged to my mother, who somehow knew exactly when to call and remind me that being a good son was more important than being a good entertainer." The night Dorothy Carson called The Tonight Show live on air became more than just a memorable television moment. It became a reminder to millions of families about the importance of expressing love while there's still time to do so. Johnny Carson had spent decades making people laugh, but that night his mother made them cry, and in doing so she gave them something more valuable than entertainment. She gave them a reminder to tell the people they love how they feel before it's too late. Today, when people talk about the most genuine moments in television history, Dorothy Carson's phone call to The Tonight Show is always mentioned. It was a moment when the carefully constructed barrier between entertainer and audience completely disappeared, revealing the human being behind the celebrity smile. Johnny Carson spent his career giving America laughter, but that December night, his mother gave America something even more precious, a reminder that behind every public figure is a person with a family, with feelings, and with the same need for love and connection that we all share. The phone call lasted less than 10 minutes, but its impact lasted a lifetime. It proved that sometimes the most powerful television happens not when everything goes according to script, but when real life interrupts the performance and reminds us all what really matters. If this incredible story of a mother's love and the power of speaking from the heart moved you, make sure to subscribe for more amazing true stories about the moments when real life created television magic. Share this video with someone you love and haven't told lately, and let us know in the comments about the most important phone call you've ever received.